with Jesus, you can make it. And I sat here and listened, and I went back to someone like Don Skank on the piano, or even Joe Vernon on the piano. He did a little Floyd like that, and Dan Downing on the bass, and some good time memories from long, long, long ago before you guys were born. All right, and that was beautiful. Well, I want to draw your attention to First Timothy, and we're going to look at several things through First and Second Timothy. Paul's admonition to Timothy as Paul nears the end of his life. And I would invite you to keep your Bibles open because we have a lot of different references we want to look at. First of all, I want to tell you a story, all right? Her name was Sue. The first, enough said. Hit it, first try. First time I saw Sue, she had on black work boots, steel-toed work boots, Dickies brand blue uniform trousers, a white man's T-shirt, and a New York Yankees ball cap. She was a healthy lady, all right, and my you got it finally, okay. My ADD mind just took off. I was in a store here recently, a couple days ago in Alabama, and I saw something just cracked me up. I was going through some shirts, and I saw double X slim fit. And I'm just cracking up laughing. I'm saying, some weirdo is trying to be politically correct here, so double X slim fit. I think that's what I need, but I know I need the double X. I'm not sure about the slim fit. Okay, where was I? I was talking about Sue. That's one of the things of a split personality. You can go tell another story and jump right back in and pick up where you left off. Sue came in and sat back over on the back side, last row of the church that I was pastoring in Eastlake, Alabama. Never met Sue before, but as I talked to her after the service, I found out that I had visited her home and left a flyer in her door about an upcoming revival service. And she lived up off of East Boulevard in a little community up there, and so she showed up. And I talked with Sue and found out where she lived, and I went by to visit. She would always come out on the front porch, and we would stand there and visit a little bit. And I gave her my phone number. I said, if there's ever anything I can do for you, you can call me. And one day she called. And I said, well, Sue, how are you? I haven't seen you in church. Yeah, she said, I've been bored, and so I'm looking for some other things to keep. And I said, well, come to church. We'll take care of that boredom. We can. She said, well, yeah, but I just been busy. And I said, okay. And I said, how may I help you? She said, I need you. I wondered if you would take me down to the bank. I need to take some money out of the bank, and I don't have a car. Would you take me down to the bank? I said, yeah, I'd be glad to. When did you want to go? She said, well, tomorrow. I want to go tomorrow. I went yesterday, and there was a problem at the bank, and they told me, the guy who cuts my grass took me yesterday. They told me that I couldn't get my money out until Wednesday. And I said, okay. So we set a time, and I swung by her house, picked her up. We headed into downtown Birmingham, and we were going to get some money out of her bank. I had no clue what was going on, but as we were driving downtown, she began to talk. She said, I was watching this documentary on TV, and it tells about all the bad things that banks do, how they steal your money, and you think they're safe, but actually they have given it to all these other people, and they're just making lots of money for them, and you don't get any of it. And sometimes when you go to try to collect your money, they say, oh, well, hang on, we gotta scramble and get it all together because everyone else is using your money. She said, I don't trust banks. She was a retired school teacher from Buffalo, New York. And She said, so I have decided that I'm going to go and take all of my money out of the bank and I'm going to bring it back home, keep it with me, and then I can do with it what I want. And I said, well, yeah, but where you live, there's some pretty rough customers living there. She said, oh, I would trust myself to take care of them better than the bank. And she said, now I came down on Monday with the guy who mows my lawn. I came in his truck and we went in to get my money, and they told me, ma'am, I'm sorry, but we can't give you that money. That's too much. We have to get that from the Federal Reserve Bank, and you'll have to come back on Wednesday. And I'm saying, whoa, wait a minute. Federal Reserve Bank, we're talking $25,000 at least. And she wants me to go pick up some money from her bank account, And I'm saying, so why, are you sure you want to do this? And she said, oh, yeah. She said, I've just had all I'm going to take of the bank using my money and them getting rich and me getting poor, and then not even certain that, like, I went to pick it up and they wouldn't even give me my own money. And I'm thinking fast, I'm thinking, obviously you're not going to talk sense into her. So I'm not sure what to do. Well, we got down there, came down 5th Street. There was a parking garage there to the left, and we turned and went in. And as we turned in, there were 4 or 5 motorcycles sitting right there on either side of the drive. And these big guys were just leaning up against the side of the building, chains everywhere and tattoos and skinheads and all this kind of stuff. And I thought, whew. She's going to take $25,000 out of the bank, and I'm supposed to run this gauntlet. I got in there and parked, and she said, that door right there on that side wall, that's where we go into the back of the bank. And I'm thinking, man, maybe we should have parked in the front. That's how the getaway guys all do it. They're just right outside the door so you can go out and take off. Well, we opened the door and started down this hall, and there's a long, dingy hall. Very poor lighting. The drop-in ceiling was sagging, and some of the panels were not fitted down in there right, and the carpet was ratty. And I'm like, we're going to a bank? This doesn't make sense. And we got to the end of the hall and turned, and there are double glass doors, and we entered the bank. And as we walked in, suddenly my senses went on high alert. I grew up in Cincinnati. All right, I've been chased all over this community, and I have a sixth sense that something's not quite right. And suddenly, people all over that bank began to move. From an office back here on the right, a man and a woman came out, and they were walking towards Sue. And as we took a couple of steps into the atrium there, I noticed that a guy from here and a guy from here moved behind us, between us and the door. And I'm like, this isn't looking so good. I hadn't even got the money yet, And some other guys went and stood on either side of the front door. And off here to my left was this glass enclosed office. It had big glass panels, and there was several men sitting in there. And this one guy got up, and he had on a sport coat, and just from looking at him, I thought, man, he looks like a detective or something. And he turned to say something to the guys, and I noticed the bulge under his arm, and I noticed the bulge right here in the waistband at the back of his pants and sport coat. And I thought, this guy is packing guns. And he's heading toward me. And I'm like, man, yeah, you're entirely welcome. I feel welcome. Everyone's gravitating toward me, and I just stepped in. I hadn't said a word, hadn't done a thing. And about that time, this guy came to me, and he sort of took my arm, and he said, I need you to come with me. And so I sort of pulled back, and I'm like, what? And he dropped his hand, and he said, I need you to follow me. So he just starts off walking toward this glass enclosed office, expecting me to follow. 2 or 3 other guys in there. And I thought, well, I'm in a bank, and so I ought to be relatively safe, but I have no clue what's going on. This man and woman got to Sue and took her back into that office. It happened to be the bank president and his secretary. They took her back in there. And these guys took me in that room, and he said, what's your name? I said, my name's Steve. What's yours? He said, my name's Jack. He said, what's your last name? I said, Stetler. He said, where do you work? I said, well, I'm the pastor of East Lake Bible Methodist Church down off of First Court, First Avenue North. He said, what are you doing here? I said, I came with Sue. She said she needed to get money out of the bank. He said, how do you know Sue? I said, well, I really don't. Then what are you doing? I said, well, she called me. She has come to my church a few times. I invited her to church. I've talked to her a couple of times. And, she called me. I gave her my number. I said, if you ever need anything, I'm here to help, and I'll be glad to help. And she asked me if I would bring her down here. She said she had come yesterday and that there was a problem at the bank, and they told her she would have to come back on Wednesday. They said, did she tell you who you came with? And I said, well, yeah, some guy that cuts her grass. She said, do you know him? I said, no. He said, have you ever seen him? No. He's just firing questions at me. And so then he started asking me all about, he said, where do you do your banking? And so I told him, and he said, what's your account number? And I said, I have no idea. I have it on a card in my wallet, and I got it out. He did it, and he handed it to a guy. The guy went over, brought up this computer, entered in a special password, and suddenly accessed my bank account. And I'm like, now, howdy doody on that. Maybe I don't trust banks either. I mean, I'm not even in a branch of that same bank, and this guy's pulling it up. And he's just, and finally I said, I'm really confused. I said, I simply drove her down here to get whatever she was going to get and was going to drive her home. And I said, obviously you guys are detectives or something, and you're real curious about me. Is there any? I said, I'm a preacher. I'm a poor preacher. You can see from my bank account. I said, can you let me know what's going on? And they said, yeah, we can let you know. I'm Jack. I'm head of the vice squad for all of Birmingham. This is my main lieutenant. This guy is head of like drugs and alcohol. This guy is over something else. And these are the big wigs from the police force in downtown Birmingham. And I said, so what is your interest in me? And they said, that's what we're trying to figure out. I said, well, okay, so fill me in. Give me some details here. And they said, do you know what she's going to do? And I said, she just told me she didn't trust banks. She was watching a documentary on TV, and she didn't trust banks, and she was going to take it all out. They said, do you have any idea how much she's going to take out? And I said, no, I don't. I said, she told me on the way down here that they said that they couldn't release that much money. They had to get it from the Federal Reserve, and so that's talking 20 to 25,000. They said 20 to 25,000. We wish. And I'm like, okay. So they said, so you don't know the other guy? And I said, no, I don't know his name. I've never seen him. They said, well, good, because we ran records on him, and he has 2 outstanding warrants. He has a rap sheet as long as your arm, and he's been in for robbery. He's been in for all kinds of things, attempted murder. And he said, that's why we showed up, because we thought he was coming back. And I said, well, I promise I'm not him. They said, oh, we know that. We saw him. And we reviewed the tapes, and we went on talking, and they said, well, do you have any problem with us trying to convince Sue to transport her money in a different way? And I said, no, I would be happy for Sue to transport it any other way other than my car. And so they went and talked to her, and they came back, and Jack's frowning. He said, no. He said, she won't. He said, do you have any idea where she lives? I said, yeah, I've been by her house. You ever been inside? I said, no. I said, she's always come out on the porch, and I've invited her to church. And he said, well, does she have some kind of a security? I said, no, she lives in a rough section. I said, she didn't have any kind of security. And so I gave him the address, and he went up. He sent a guy to look it over. And we kept talking, and pretty soon the bank president came in and said, Mr. Stetler, can you come to my office and talk with Sue? Jack, you come too. So Jack and I went over to his office, and we sat down, and the bank president is saying, now, Sue, I wanted to explain again to you the options. We will send an armored truck from this bank to any bank in the state of Alabama to transport your money. And she said, no, I don't trust banks. I don't trust armored cars. My pastor's going to take it with us. And I'm like, man, woman, you're an idiot. And they said, well, we will at least let us take it by armored car to your house. And I'm thinking, that's not a good idea, because when an armored truck pulls up to your house and these guys carrying guns come walking, carrying bags of money and take it in and set it down in your house, everyone in that neighborhood wants to go inside the house and see what's happening. So so she said, no, and said, well, how are you going to transport it? She said, I brought something right here. She digs down in this big purse and brings out 2 plastic Walmart bags. She said, I figured I'd double them, and she doubled them up. And I thought the bank president was going to pass out on the floor. He looked at it and he said, you're going to transport your money in that? She said, yeah. And pastor's going to take care of me. And I said, Pastor and Jesus are going to take care of you, mostly Jesus, because it's not me. And so the bank said, he looks at me, and I said, hey, I'm just a driver, you know. And is there anything you can do to convince her? And I said, no, I really don't know Sue. I said, she showed up in my church a couple times. I've talked to her out on the porch of her house a couple of times. And I'm just here to drive her home. She just told me she needed to take some money out of the bank. And he said, yeah, a lot of money. He said, like half of what we have in our bank. And he was sort of laughing. And so they said, okay. And she said, here, just put it in these bags, and gave it to the secretary. And then Jack and I went back to the office. And so they said, listen, we've already got people surrounding her house. Her house is staked out. And my lieutenant and I are going to follow you. We need to set a plan. So we charted out. I said, I'm going to go out of the thing out on the fit. And they said, no, it's one way coming in, so you got to go out this way. I said, okay. And I said, where are you going to be? He said, you'll go out this alley between 2 buildings. When you get out there, we'll be sitting over there. We'll signal to you. You turn right, go down to the second light, turn right, and that's the entrance ramp getting on the interstate, and it'll take you right to First Avenue North. You can get off and hit East Boulevard and go to her house. I said, okay, we got it all down. They were going to follow me. Sue came in, and she said, I'm about ready. Can you come help me carry my money? And I said, okay. So, and I looked at Jack, and I said, so what am I supposed to do? He said, just drive, and if they start shooting, just keep your head down. And I'm like, and you're going to be with me. You're going to be following me. Yeah, we're going to be following you. So I went, and sure enough, she has this double Walmart bag contraption full of banded stacks of $100 bills. And they are just falling out. She said, could you get that for me? And I would pick it up, and she would drop another one. And we're going through the lobby, and here are all these guys. You can see the guns on them. And they're all sort of following us, like, what do we do next, And Jack's there, and he's looking at me and rolling his eyes and shaking his head. And I said, yeah, I feel like I want to throw up too, And we're going out, and so he said, where are you parked? I said, back out in the garage. He said, oh. He said, you got to go down the hallway. And I said, yeah. Any way you can get a guy down at the end? He said, no, that's too obvious. I said, I don't care if it's obvious or not. And so we go out there, and finally, she had her other purse, and so I'm holding one set of handles, and she's holding the other set of handles, and we're swinging our baby of cash down here, walking down this hallway, and I get out to the end, and I give it to her, and I'm unlocking the car, and I'm getting in, and I said, just quickly, just get inside, and then we can arrange everything when you get inside. She said, okay. She said, oh, I wanted to find my keys. And she takes this bag of cash and sets it on the roof of my car. And she's digging down in here looking for her keys. I'm on this side. I look up at this bag of cash. I look up, and there's 5 motorcycle riders about from here to that post away. And they're looking, and they're getting interested. And I said, just get in. You can find your keys inside. Okay. So she gets in and shuts the door. I said, no, the baby's on top. And she gets out, she picks it up and sets it in. And And I'm like, oh, thank you, Jesus. We're in here, and we lock the doors, and we back out, and I go out and down the alley, and I get to the end of the alley, and there's a Monte Carlo, a light blue Monte Carlo with a white hard top, fully restored. I mean, it's a gorgeous car. And the electric window just eases down, and this guy looks out with these shades, and he tips them up and waves at me and puts them back down. I thought, oh, great, now it's Miami Vice or something, you know. And I turn right, and they pull in behind me. And so they know where I'm going. They're going to stay right on my tail. She said, I've been thinking, I don't trust interstates. And I'm saying, oh, no, Lord. She said, I don't trust interstates. I was watching this documentary. I said, I'm going to shoot your TV with a shotgun so you won't watch anything else. I'm going to watch this. I was watching this documentary, and she said, they say that if you get on the interstate, people are just driving up by you and smiling and then shooting you in the head. She said, I'm not comfortable with interstates, so I don't want to go on the interstate. I said, no, ma'am. I said, I talked to Jack. And he gave me the route, and we're going to go down here to Second Light and go, and it'll put us right up on the interstate, and then they're going to be right behind us. They're watching everything. They see a bad guy with a gun, they'll shoot him first. She said, no, I don't trust the interstate. I want you to turn right. So we get right up there, going up to the entrance ramp, and I'm at this light. She said, I want you to go right here, and we go down to First Avenue. If you've ever been on First Avenue in downtown Birmingham in that section, every drunken wino and crook that's around lives there. Said, that's how I want to go. That's safer. I said, that's not safer. I hear the horn honk behind me, and the guys are going, go. And I put my hand down, and I go like this, just a minute. And we're talking. She said, no, go. I said, but I told them. She said, no, it's my money, and I'm protecting. You go here. So I just stuck my hand back and waited for those guys to follow and turn right. We go down there, and it's like 4 blocks before we hit First Avenue. But 1 block shy of that, she said, you got to turn here. And I said, no, that's not how you get on First Avenue. You go under the overpass and you come up on the entrance. No, this is it. I've lived here all my life. And I said, no, you told me well, I've lived here longer than you. I said, yeah, but I come down here regularly, working with people and this kind of stuff. And I said, this takes us back into like an industrial park. She said, no, I want you to turn here. So once again, I put my hand back and motioned for the guy. I certainly didn't want to lose him. I said, follow me. And I turned, and sure enough, it takes me in a dead-end industrial park, and all these big warehouses are empty. They have all kinds of spray-painted gang messages on the walls, and I'm like, Lord, what have I got myself into? And I'm like, oh, no. And so I just keep waving for those guys to follow. I see them pick up their radios, and they're calling, and they look angry. And I get down there, and I said, see, there's no place. It's dead end. She said, yeah, I guess you better turn around. I think maybe it's the next one. I said, that's what I tried to tell you. And I turned around and went back. And as I came by, the guys glared at me and said, what's happening? I said, it's her. And they're saying, yeah, right. You're the one that's after her money. I come back, and we go and we start down First Avenue. The very first stoplight we get to is real busy, and there's 2 of the biggest men that I've ever seen. Maybe they weren't as big as they looked right at that moment, but they looked real big and real bad. All right? One was a big black guy, had tattoos all over, and it's like he couldn't even move his arms. They were so muscle-bound. And this big white guy beside him, and they had scars and tattoos all over. And she said, oh, you know what? I didn't even think. I haven't counted my money. And she sets that bag up and pops the tape, and she's going through 100, 200, 300, 400, and she's got 150 more bundles. And she's counting them out one. And I look over, and these guys are looking down in there, and their eyes are great big. And I put my arm back there and motioned them. And I said, well, let's get out of here. And we just accelerated and took off. These guys are freaking out behind me. They follow me all. From that point on, I didn't stop at another red light. I blew every light. I figured if they want to stop me, they can take me to jail. Then someone else has to transport her money. We got all the way back. They followed me all the way up. We walked in, and she sets this money bag down. Never did find her keys. And so she's open. She said, you're going to have to excuse the mess. I'm doing spring cleaning. And I walked in, and there was a little trail about this wide through her living room and all, and there's literally probably 3/4 of an inch of dust on the floors. there was a calendar on the wall that was 5.5 years old. And there were just stacks of newspapers and magazines and all this. And she just said, here, I can rearrange this later. And she just shoved a bunch of them off on the floor and made a place for me to sit down. And she said, I'll go take care of this money. And she walks back and disappears in the room. And I hear the squeak of a window opening. And then the squeak of another window opening. And she said, come back here and make sure this is all right. I walked back through there, and there was a bedroom that nothing was in it. Not a single thing. Totally bare. She had set that bag of packs of $100 bills on the floor, and on either side of it opened the windows out into the backyard. She said, it's a little stuffy in here. We need some air. There's no bars. There's nothing. Wide open windows, not even a screen, and we got thousands of dollars sitting on the floor. And I'm like, she said, you think that'll be all right? And I said, not so much, but, it's your money. Do whatever you want to. I was wanting to get out of there. Finally, she talked, and she said, oh, I want to give you something. And she found a checkbook, and she wrote me out a check for $50 and gave it to me. I was just with her when she took all the money out of her bank. She wrote me a rubber check for $50. And I'm thinking, just give me one of those packs. That'll do me, I walked back out, and these guys are waiting on me. And they motioned for me. They wanted me to get in their car. They took me up on a cul-de-sac up above there, and they said, what happened? And I told them, and they said, why did you? I said, it was her. That's why I motioned for you to come on. They said, you could have got killed. I said, you don't have to tell me. Why do you think I ran the rest of the red lights? And he said, that was attracting attention. I said, of who? He said, of cops. I said, I'd have been glad for a whole swarm of cops right then. He said, what did you do with the money? I started laughing. I couldn't help it. I said, you're not going to believe this. They said, well, try us. I said, she went and took it into her bedroom that is stark empty. There's nothing in that room. And she set that bag of $100 bills down on the floor. And there's a window on either side of it. And she opened both of them to let air in because it felt a little stuffy in there. And there's no bars, and there's not even a screen. It's open right to the outside, and it's at ground level. So I could have stood there and put my chin on the windowsill and looked in and saw her money. They said, you got to be joking. I said, I'm not joking at all. And I said, guys, I've never been in that house until today. I don't ever plan to come back to this house. They said, oh, we know you're clean. And the guy said, look at this. And he held up 6 or 7 feet of info on me. He said, I can tell what hospital you were born in, the time of day, every bank account you've ever had, every late payment, any credit card you have. He said, you're clean. I said, hallelujah, I'm clean. And I plan to stay that way. All right? They were concerned because there was a large amount of money that they wanted to protect. All right? We're shifting gears really fast because that story was way too long. You needed a story this morning. I could tell it from the look on your face. But they were so concerned, they were willing to go to any extent to protect her deposit. All right? When we look here at Timothy, that's exactly what we see. He is coming down to the end of his life, and he is looking backwards at all that God has done, and he's looking around and seeing what is happening in the church. And then he's looking forward, and he said, we need to start this transition from me to someone else. And that's where we pick up. The last chapter of 1 Timothy, chapter 6, verse 20 and 21. O Timothy, keep that which is committed to thy trust, avoiding profane and vain babblings and oppositions of science falsely so called, while some professing have erred concerning the faith. And so here in layman's terms, this is what Paul is saying to Timothy. he says, "O Timothy, keep that which is committed to thy trust." He's saying, Timothy, you need to guard the deposit that I'm going to give you. I'm getting old. Soon I will go face my maker and receive my reward. But the work must go on. And I'm going to deposit all the wisdom and all the knowledge and all the learning from a lifetime of service. I have tried to pour that into you. And now it's your turn to step up to the plate and guard the deposit. All right? We see in 1 Timothy 1:1, I think it's 1:1, and 2 Timothy, 1:2, and 2 Timothy 1:2, the close relationship of Paul and Timothy. In chapter 1, verse 2, he says, "My own son in the faith." In 2 Timothy 1:2, "My dearly beloved son." So the picture is this father who has this wealth of knowledge and this huge accumulation of information and things of vital importance. And he is depositing it into the mind and the heart and the life of Timothy. And he says, Timothy, whatever you do, guard the deposit. It's so important. Now, I don't know your background, but God has sent you here. And all this year, dedicated staff and faculty and mentors have been pouring in a tremendous volume of knowledge and understanding and teaching you to understand the scripture and helping you to catch a vision of what God has for you in your life. And all of that is coming to a head, and we're right here at the end of the semester, the end of the school year. And many of you will go back home to places where your circle of friends are not the same quality as your friends here. And some of them, maybe many of them, are not inclined to spiritual things. And you're going to go back to a work situation where you have to face the jokes and the language and all of that, and you're suddenly surrounded. You come out of a holy place into an unholy place, and the devil would love to trip you up and distract you and get you sidetracked. And I'm old enough to be your daddy. I'm not your daddy. But I'm feeling probably like Paul was as he was looking at Timothy. And I look out in the faces of you that I love and have confidence in. I'm saying, whatever you do, when you leave this institution here in 2 or 3 weeks and you go back into your home setting, whatever you do, guard the things that have been deposited into your life because they have eternal value. All right, they're the things that are going to make a difference. They're going to transform your life. Through God and your efforts, you're going to help transform the life of others. But guard that deposit. It's more than stacks of $100 bills. It's never dying souls that are involved. And you need to get up there and stay on your knees and keep your heart hot with the presence of God. You need to guard this deposit. It's so important. There's so many things that I want to give. I could talk about how it is given as a command or charge. There's a whole bunch of verses there, and we'll leave that out. Let me look at the specifics of what Paul wanted Timothy to guard. Pardon me. In Spanish, we have a way of emphasizing. We use a noun in English to talk about, so we're going to talk about money. So we just say money. But in Spanish, and I understand it's the same in Greek, we can emphasize that by putting a definite article in front of it. And that adds urgency, that adds authority. So in Spanish, we say Señor. But if I really want to talk about the God of all gods, I say El Señor. All right? Because that adds that authority to it. And so that's what Paul is saying when he talks to Timothy. And there's 3 basic things and then a little side trail of things that he talks about. First of all, the first thing that he says Timothy needs to guard is the faith. All right? Now, faith is not and this in this context is not just believing something, but faith. He's talking about the whole body of Christian truth and practice, the Christian faith. He says you need to guard the faith. Young people, the one thing that the devil wants to destroy in your life when you leave this institution is your faith in an almighty God. So he says, guard the faith. Chapter 119, 3, 9, 3, 13, 4, 1, 4, 6, 5, 8, 6, 10, 6, 12, 6, 21, 2 Timothy 3, 8, 3, 15, 4, 7. All of them talk about doing something with the faith. You've got to guard the faith. All right? The second thing that he emphasizes is the doctrine. All right? So the faith is the sum total of belief and practice of a Christian. But the doctrine, the word doctrine and teachings are often in the original used interchangeably. And so he's saying guard the doctrine or the teachings, the basic core of our belief system. You need to guard the doctrine. And once again, chapter 1, verse 9 and 10, he's talking about the sound doctrine. 4:6, the good doctrine. 4:13, he's talking about give heed to reading and to exhortation and to the doctrine. 6:1, the name of God and the doctrine be not blasphemed. 6:3, he's talking about it. 2 Timothy 3:10, he's talking about closely following the doctrine that he taught. So the second thing you need to guard and protect, not only the faith, but the doctrine. Now it's interesting, he connects with this, the idea of Timothy, you need to surround yourself by capable teachers and people of high integrity, because you're protecting this deposit that is so valuable. And you not only need to protect it and guard it, but you need to share it with others and pass it on. I'm here. You're here. All of us are here because someone before us guarded the deposit and protected the faith and the doctrine, and then they have taught it to us. And we're here today because the passing on of that doctrine. And he talks about those that are apt to teach and choose those that labor in the word and in teaching, and give this to committed men who shall teach others also. And he's talking about teaching. So not only do we guard the faith and the doctrine, but we need to give it to men, teach it to men who are capable of teaching it to others. And the reason we need to do that is very clear as well. In chapter 1, verse 3, he says, some men will teach different doctrines. 1 verse 7, some desire to be teachers of the law and understand neither what they say nor what they affirm. Chapter 4, verse 1, some shall fall away giving heed to the teaching of demons. 6:3, some men teach other doctrines. So we need to guard this deposit, but we need to pass it on in a responsible manner so that others understand as well. The third thing is, he said, we need to protect the godliness. So faith is the sum total of Christian truth and practice. The doctrine is what we believe and why we believe it. But all of that is hollow, all of that is empty, all of that is extraneous unless we have a life that is godly, unless we practice it, unless we live it. It doesn't matter how much you tell about your faith and discuss your doctrine unless your lifestyle backs it up. No one's going to listen to what you have. So he says you need to protect the godliness, and quite frankly, that means live a godly life. All right? Now, okay, it's time to stop. Let's cut to the chase here at the end. 2 Timothy 3:5 gives us a warning. He said it is possible for you to have a form of godliness that is hollow. You have a form of godliness, but you deny by your life and actions the power of that godliness. And the power of the godliness is a transformed life. So you have all the verbiage. You have all of the talk. You know how to talk a talk and make all the applications, but you're lifeless and powerless because you don't live a godly life. When you leave this place, when you go home for the summer, when you go back to your job, back to your girlfriend, back to your family, back to your home church, you need to guard the things that have been deposited into your life. And here's why. He shows us very clearly. And we're going to read 4 or 5 verses here to be done. But I want you to notice the shift from 1 Timothy to 2 Timothy. All right? If you got your Bibles, let's go back to 1 Timothy 1:6. He said you need to guard this deposit because some, and the key word is some, not all, but some have turned aside. All right? Go down to verse 19. He says, some have made shipwreck. And what he's conveying to Timothy, his son in the faith, he said, Timothy, I don't want you to crash and burn. I don't want you to be another statistic. I don't want to find the wreckage from your ship on the rocks. So guard this that I'm depositing. Some have turned aside. Some have made shipwreck. Chapter 5, verse 15, some have turned aside after Satan. Chapter 6, verse 10, some have been led astray. Chapter 6, verse 21, some have missed the mark. That's the marginal reading. They aim, but they've sheared off somewhere, and they missed the mark completely. Some have. But notice as we shift into 2 Timothy, notice the difference. 2 Timothy 1:15, what does he say? All that are in Asia have turned away. Chapter 4, verse 16, all men forsook us. All right? Paul is saying, Timothy, you have been given something of great value, and you need to guard it with your life. Literally, you need to do whatever is necessary to protect the treasure that you have been given in your heart and life. And young people, you're blessed beyond measure. You don't even fully understand how blessed you are. But you have been given a treasure that is worth far more than Sue's bag of money. And Paul and the staff and faculty and myself are all urging you, whatever you do, guard the faith, guard the doctrine, guard the holy lifestyle, because many in this day are falling by the wayside, and we don't want you to be numbered with that. But we want to teach others and pass that on to another generation. And someday you may be standing where I'm standing, talking to the next generation, and you say, someone invested in me something of great value, and I did the best that I could to preserve it and pass it on. And you're here today because someone before you guarded the deposit. Make sure you guard the things that are valuable in your life today.
Thank you, Brother Stetler, and that was an amazing truth that I hope that you will apply to your life and embrace that. Let's stand together.